All right, guys, my guest tonight is Judge Joe Brown. He is a former lawyer and television personality, and he is now a candidate for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you so much for coming on, Judge Brown.
Practicing lawyer once a lawyer, always a lawyer. You're retired, doesn't stop you from having what it is up here, but I don't practice. But yeah, anyway, real live deal, real thing. UCLA way back when. All right, so you got me. What are we gonna do? Where are we going?
First, I want to start off a little bit talking about your background, and then we'll get into your mayor race. And I have a couple
Background?
questions. Yeah, we'll start off
You
with your
want
background because I'm curious about something. I noticed that you and Judge Mathis have something in common other than being
No, we
judges. Like,
don't.
no, but let me. I knew you were gonna say that. No, I was
He
gonna
was a gang
say
member. I never was. I had
that's
to
true.
be around. He didn't.
But both of you grew up in tough neighborhoods, right? So
That
I
may
think
be true, but it was a different thing. See, tough was like, what do you call it tough? 1,000 years ago, when there were lions out there getting ready to have you for breakfast, lunch, and or dinner, or are you just talking about some local homies down in the hood that didn't have daddies around? See, my situation, just about everybody knew who Pops was back when. He was either there with you. Very, very few had been divorced from moms. Some died in Korea, some died in World War II. But you had idea. We didn't have that kind of thing that they had so recently now, where nobody was there to teach you.
mm,
There's a
well,
big difference, and we didn't join gangs. It was always little crybabies that joined the gangs. They were crying about mom and snot running all out their nose in the fifth grade. Then when they got in the seventh grade and they posse up, they were all this and that, which they really weren't still. So anyway, it is what it is.
but how
No,
would you say, how did you grew up in Crenshaw, and I think a lot of
no,
us.
Crenshaw. Crenshaw was nice. I grew up for the longest time. I was on 58th Place in Normandy, which is right down where things are. That wasn't even South Central then, because they didn't come up with that name until it was years later. Now the city council said it is so possessed of an onus that we can't use South Central anymore. But anyway, it is what it was. So Crenshaw was much later.
Mm, do you feel that the movie Boys in the Hood depicts it accurately?
Oh yeah, but what's in Boys in the Hood in the Crenshaw area over by the railroad tracks and around and about there, that was over where I was. You know, everybody had to accommodate the fools in the gang, but in the gangs, but only the ones that didn't have daddy, they nobody else joined, so we had to deal with them. They bunch of little mama's boys who didn't know what it was to be a man, didn't understand unity and duty, honor, obligation, and all that other kind of stuff, working hard and taking care of those who depended on you. They didn't understand that. So, yeah, there was that. But it was what it was. And the Boys in the Hood was a lot like what I experienced when I was growing up. Quite similar. And some of us had fathers. I guess Lawrence Fishburne's character was a stand in for that. And some of us, very few of us, had situations like that crazy mama where, let's see, one of her sons was Ice Cube, who was the good one. She didn't like his daddy. So she mistreated him, the little crazy one who was an athlete. She loved his daddy's dirty draws, and she wasted the time on the loser. So it's all about that. It's all about that.
Well, why did you decide to become a judge?
I didn't decide to become a judge. It's what happened. You can't decide early in life you're going to be a judge. If you do that, you're not worthy of being one, because you don't become learned and experienced in the law and the wise in the ways of the world. You have to be called to be a judge. Your
Mm,
life has to have fallen in place so you have the opportunity to get experience where if you're going to be a good judge, you aren't really a judge. What you are is a village chieftain, and a village chieftain also has to be a judge, because it's about your business to make sure that where you live is an orderly place, because without that, everything goes to hell. I don't know where these folk get the idea now that somehow or another law and order is anti-black, because everywhere on the whole planet, you get humans, first thing they do is set up some kind of code. You have standards, like in the John Wick franchise. What separates humans from animals? The rules. And if you have no rules, you're animals, and there are consequences, and everybody's about that. So we need to remember that again.
I don't think people are against having rules per se. I think a lot of people are just against people abusing power.
Well, then, goddamn it, get your own power. You want power? Sit your ass down at the kitchen table and do your homework, K through 12. Or if you got a son or a daughter, sit down and do it with them. And don't just favor the girls, because girls don't do drive-bys. You neglect your boys and don't know what the Spartan mothers used to tell their son, come back with your shield on and do or die. You don't put the word in your son's head, then you got a drive-by situation 16 years later.
Mm.
So we can do what we need to do, and there's no white supremacist sitting on the other side of the kitchen table keeping anybody from doing homework.
So why did you decide to run for mayor of Memphis?
An old friend of mine of 50 years talked me into it, the late Mrs. or Dr. Barbara Cooper from Memphis, Tennessee. She slipped and fell when she was 94 years old, got a blood clot, had a coma that resulted from it. She revived, but she didn't recover, really. She was the oldest elected person actively serving in the state legislature here in Tennessee. Been a good woman, and I'd been doing a lot of things. And in my life, I kind of got called to what I did. I didn't really want to be a judge. I definitely didn't want to be a lawyer. It just kind of sort of happened. And that's the way of it. It's like, what are you about and what are your objectives in life? What are my objectives? My thing is to be a man. And I'm wearing this from a friend. He does this masculinity clothing thing, which is what this says. So if you're going to be a man, you're about duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. You're a man of peace who can be brave and courageous when necessary. And you are about my personal motto, which is protecting womanhood and childhood and promoting manhood. That's how humanity works. And if you're not about that, you're not worth any damn thing as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, there.
Oh, Judge Brown, I want to show everyone your website here for mayor. So it says send Brown downtown, Memphis Mayor 2023. And one of the things I noticed about your campaign, it says people bought, people owned. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I believe you run a grassroots campaign.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. If you want to find out what your who owns your local officials, if anybody, there's a website. It's known as followthemoney.org. Don't Google it. You'll go nowhere. Just enter it directly into your browser. Followthemoney.org. It's complicated, but you can enter the name of the individual you're concerned with, what they are about, where they're from, and it'll tell you who's contributed to them and how much. So you can see whether you have a real live representative or you're being gamed because you got a stooge that is owned by somebody else. And when you find out they are, then you know what time it is. That's why we don't have much going on right now, because institutions like Black Caucus are just essentially worthless. They haven't done anything for black folk more than the last 30 years, and we have enough of them to be quite effective were they to decide to do that, rather than using our votes to be put in place to be surrogates for something else. What do I mean by that? Well, it's hard being black in America, you know. And a lot of folks go, oh, I don't want to be a Negro anymore. I want to quit it. I want to be something else. So what am I going to be? Oh, I can be one of these guys over here. Oh, yeah. And they'll take care of me. I might be just a pet or a lap dog, but they'll take good care of me, and I can wag my tail and let my tongue hang out, sit on my ass, and roll over and get my tummy scratched. And I can do what I want to do, or else the new thing is we've got all these opportunities in cities like Memphis, and we've got too many of the people that are just plain crooks. They steal from the people and their ideas. It's our term to get the gravy now. No, it's your term to deliver justice, equity, and fair government. So right now, Memphis, let's take this. Memphis just happens to be the largest predominantly black city in America. We had a recent thing where a young man named Tyree Nichols, who got put up for adoption by the family that was crying all over him during all of the send away ceremonies. He was adopted by a white couple in California and raised. They sent him back to Tennessee to meet up with his birth family. Well, they didn't have much to do with him. He wound up getting targeted by some police who didn't do it because they were police. They had to deal. They did it because, classic thing. 3 ways going on. Love affairs went wrong. Had nothing to do with the police, but everybody was talking about white supremacy. They brought in grinning hyena, Kamala Harris, Imhoff, Clown Sharpton, and whatever, and they got to talking about white supremacy. Well, guess what? 65% of the police department's black. The chief of police is a black female. The sheriff is a black male. 80% of the command hierarchy in the police and the sheriff's department's black. 65% of the jury pool is black. 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. So where the hell is the racism that's supposed to be the white supremacy? See, it's just you got to do what you got to do, and nobody owes you a damn thing. And if you don't understand that, go out there and deal with get hit by a bolt of lightning, done in by an earthquake, volcano, meteorite hitting you because you had to be in the wrong place, wrong time, plane crash, tsunami, flood, typhoon, hurricane, you name it. All kinds of stuff will kill you. So nothing owes you anything unless you're a vegetarian. Last time you ate something, did you ask the poor animal if it wanted to be on your plate? No, it ain't fair. If you're a cow or you're a chicken, hell, I'd sure as hell hate to be a damn chicken. Look at Popeyes and all the chickens they killed off while stupid Negroes were waiting in line in 100-degree heat for 2 hours to get a cheap piece of fast food. So, I mean, think about it. And then why are we sitting there? I went out the other night. I got hungry late at night.
Uh-oh. Oh, no, Judge Brown, we lost you. Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, no, we lost you again. Oh, no. I think it's we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Somebody tried to call out his help. Didn't do not disturb, so maybe that won't interfere. I went out late on the snack. So I go up and I find the hamburger place is open. There are 27 cars in line. And I said, damn, if I'm going to be big enough fool to go wait that long to get something that's going to kill me off. No, I have more concern for self. I won't even wait that damn long to get served in a 5-star restaurant. Here you are with junk food. You're in line, 27 cars, and the folk waiting on you can't count anyway, especially if the cash register with the pictures goes down to do it for them. No way. See, so What do we do to be stuck on stupid? You got to start thinking. If you want something, you got to work at it. Nothing comes free. Yo, man, you know, it's like, man, is white supremacy keep me down? Oh, it does. Really? Oh, yeah, man. See, my lady, man, we try. Well, what are you bringing to the mix, man? Well, yeah, man, she got a good job. Well, what do you do? What you mean, what I do? I smooth her? No, what do you do? Well, man, I'll make sure she, you know, it worked well for. No, that ain't what a man does. Don't you get the idea, man? Titanic sinks, you supposed to sink with the ship, say the women and children lifeboat first type stuff. Takes a lot of conditioning, and you letting your lady take care of you. You ain't shit, man. You just simping.
Well, I like the fact that you're running for local office because I feel like a lot of people that end up running, they want to run for like a congressional seat or like something like that. And I always tell people that local politics is very important. And I feel like there's a lot of things happening on the local level that people just aren't paying attention to. There's a lot of laws and things that are being passed, and I think you can have a lot of impact on the local level more so on the national level. And you brought up the issue with the money. And this is something that we talk about a lot on the show. A lot of our politicians are bought and paid for. And then people get really angry because I saw a lot of people show up to support Joe Biden in 2020, standing in line for 10, 14 hours. Some
He's a
people.
racist, low-down dog, a piece of urban trailer park trash. Excuse me. And I hate to insult folk. I heard that racist dog give one of the worst, most racist speeches I've ever heard in my life. It was 1972. It was outside the Capitol building in Dover, Delaware, where I was doing research for a DC think tank as an intern. All right. And George Wallace was there. I think he may have still been, well, he was in a wheelchair. There was Bird, and there was Stedis, and there was, let's see, Forbes, who said there'll be no Negroes coming to the Little Rock High School as long as I'm governor, back when in the 50s. And let's see, there was James O. Eastland from Mississippi, and they had this ducktail wearing clown of hairstyle that they hadn't worn since the late 50s. It is 1972, and this idiot gets up there and talks about how proud he is to have been adopted by Delaware, a state that knew the Negro, and we hadn't called ourselves that in a long time. It was Black or Afro-American. And he was talking about there were Negro children who turned schools into zoos. Yeah. And then there were Negroes out in the streets who turned the streets into jungles. And he and Eastland were going to make sure that these Negroes got put in zoos. And he was upset with Delaware for not seceding from the Union and joining the glorious South. And they were bragging about that new wimpy womp chump who was going to be the newest Dixiecrat. And a racist dog has done a whole lot to screw us around. Had the nerve to say, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Well, I'm black, you goddamn bastard. So to hell with you. And you're a damn crook and you need to be in jail. And by the way, I was the one that was doing that judge on the moot court thing where we looked at the 3 laptops that crackhead left with the repairman. It wasn't 1, it was 3. And we looked at the downloads, and there's some stuff in there that people need to be in jail for. And Law and Order, lying hypocrites sitting up in there, and now turned the White House into the crack house, I guess. Latest little scam. And now they're trying to spin that. Did it get found in the foyer where somebody left a bag, you know? And who found it, by the way? Was it the Secret Service or was it one of the black clerical or janitorial staff who said, I don't like this fool. The more I see him, hell, look what we found. But then it was in the library, which is very, very restricted. And then in the executive office section, which you got to get a secret clearance to get up in there. or was it what they had on Twitter, that little fast vignette of Hunter, as he was stalking off behind somebody, taking a one-shot hit. Yeah, okay, fine. And by the way,
We tried to warn people about Joe Biden. Why do you think people still, particularly black people, why do you think black people still showed up to vote for Joe Biden?
we love the Samantha. Oh, we so do. We been so good. He give us an extra ration to compound when we be doing some work. We don't work too hard, but we sure love Massa. He ain't locked the gates on the plantation. We walk off whenever we want, but we sure love staying. And Lord, he give us some nice treats and make him feel good. He scratches right behind the ears, he do. Joe, sorry, specimen, every other ethnic group in the United States of America periodically tells the party they've been supporting, go to hell. You're not doing enough. We'll go the other way. Oh, we have to vote for the lesser of two evils and these horrible Republicans and all these other folks. Yeah, but what's this bunch of jerks done here except sold you out for that Skittle stuff, with all the colors in it. Went after it rains in the sky. And, that's your business. Get your freak on in your bedroom, do your thing. But what they're trying to do is get in touch with your kids so they can, oh my, look at that nice tender one over there. Oh, doesn't he look sweet? He's 9. He's so unspoiled. Yeah. Get your filthy grubbies off of the children. And it's a cult, and they're trying to make it the official religion of the United States. And if you don't get it, we've got Judaism, we've got Christianity, we've got Islam, we've got Hinduism, and we've got Buddhism. But guess what? There's no God for Buddhism. It's a system of philosophy. Buddha was a prince who renounced his royalty to do good works. They have no God. That in the sky after rain bunch, it doesn't have a God either, but it's a system of philosophy, and not just they get their freak on in a certain kind of way in a bedroom. It's a lifestyle. And by the way, a lot of people who do that kind of thing to get their freak on, they think the damn thing is a cult. And it is. It's like, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean that you like Reverend Jim Jones and drinking Kool-Aid at large church picnics in Guyana. Or if you're Islamic, it doesn't mean you support ISIS or Al Qaeda either. So you can't put a cross, crescent, 6-pointed Jewish star. You can't put a Hindu symbol or Buddha under the American flag, but you can put all those colors under there. And you can't put a nativity scene out in City Hall or anywhere that the city, state, county, feds pay for, but you go places and they got that after the rain color scheme that city employees painted the sidewalks with and the crosswalks with, and big 11-floor banners hanging from a federal building. And at the embassy or the consulate, you see that flag under the American flag, which, by the way, is against the law, but it doesn't make any difference. And they want to corrupt your children. And then the Michigan state legislative chamber, their house, passed something that fortunately hasn't gone to their Senate nor gotten through the governor, that would make it a felony if you call somebody outside of their pronoun. And then that's the most ridiculous damn thing in the world. First Amendment says you got freedom of speech, but it's a felony if you don't know this idiot's particular special pronoun. And, how the hell are you supposed to know? You don't even know what his name is. What you supposed to do? Write the goddamn thing on his forehead? And if he's that big a fool, you call it a it. He, she, it. He, she, it is here now. What are you supposed to say? They is here now? That's bad English. So you want to corrupt the English language and screw up communications because some little selfish wimp hates what they are, and you want to turn all your stuff into being guided by some fool that needs a little mental health because they hate themselves so much they want to cut their balls and swing her off, and or they want to show up what they got.
I think if someone asks you to call them, like for me, if someone asked me to call them, a certain pronoun, I respect, that person's wishes.
I'm saying hell with you.
Why?
And no, because I'm not corrupting the English language for you. I'm sorry if you hate yourself, but I grew up in an era where in elementary, junior high, and high school, we used to run the dozens for recreation. Hey man, I won't say nothing about your mama, man, but last night when I was by there, man, like, hey man, I won't say nothing about your mama, man. She's so big, man, she can't fit in the bathtub, but with 2 drops of water. That's why she can't never get clean. She stinks so much, man. That's why we used to do run recreation. If I say you stupid enough to want to put that on your forehead, I'm talking about you. What's wrong with you, man? You hate yourself? What, man? Wait a minute. You gonna cut your shit off, man? What's the matter with you?
But I will say that the English language has evolved though over the years.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna help it devolve. It's hard enough for people to learn how to speak it. So you don't really learn the facility in the English language. Nobody does until you get about 60 years old. That's when your vocabulary picks up to its max and you get how to use it. That hard, and I listen to people can't even speak English. They have no idea syntax, object, predicate, verbs, adjectives, what the devil to do, how to deal with putting a sentence together, a paragraph, or getting a coherent thought down in writing. They can't write longhand anymore, and I'm not going to help that out. No, you can tough it up and you can do what human beings have done since day one, which is you have a duty, honor, and obligation to make where you are a better damn place and do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be brave and courageous because there's a lion out there, Simba, a.k.a. adversity, that's looking at you like, oh, that looks pretty good. I bet that one would be nice and tender with a little sauce here and maybe leave it out for a few days to ripen up, so it gets an aroma and bouquet, be nice and tender. Put it up in the tree for a little bit so the hyenas don't get that. Oh, wow, quite tasty. See, we have things that we have to deal with. So I'm not going to corrupt the English language. Hell with you. I have my First Amendment rights, and the First Amendment does not embrace me not hurting your feelings. As long as I'm doing what I'm entitled to do, to hell with your damn feelings. Man the hell up, woman up, and do what you're supposed to do, because everybody depends on everybody else. And the more folk do their duty, the better it is.
Well, I choose, like me personally, I choose to respect people's what they want to be called. But I do want to get to this point here about Biden and Trump, because I know
I'm not. You either he, she, or it. Now, and if you are singular, you get the singular pronoun, adjective, and verb, and the context is singular. You can be she, he, or it. I'm not going to make you a plural, and you're nowhere near royalty in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, forbids ennoblement. So you cannot sit there and say, we have an audience. No, you're not royalty. There's enough clowning that the British royals do any damn way. Leave it over there.
Well, I think one of the things that bothers me, and a lot of the people in this audience, we've talked about this a lot, is that people are not focusing on the big issues right now. Like a lot of people are really angry about the economy. They're mad about inflation. They're mad about the economic issues. And I feel like this is where someone like Ron DeSantis gets this totally wrong. That's why he's not doing well in the polls. He's not focusing on the most pressing needs for working class people in this country right now. And also neither is Joe Biden. And that's why he's not polling well. And Donald Trump is ahead of Joe Biden in the polls, even though Donald Trump has an indictment against him, which I think is actually helping him.
Is ridiculous. It's contrary to American law. And if you think about it, it's a damn fool move. Let's talk about that when you get through making your point.
Yeah. So what I was going to mention is that I know that some people gave you criticism because you supported Donald Trump. And so
I
I
didn't
want you to
support
explain.
him. It's the law. For example, everybody knows Miranda rights. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you, aside from the huge panoply of rights that are set forth in the Fifth Amendment. Well, Miranda was not a nice person. Back in the 60s, when the U.S. Supreme Court identified your rights under the general category using his name, he was a real live jerk. They let him out. He got put back in jail for another felony. And when he got out, he died violently because somebody killed him. So anyway, Miranda was not a nice person. Most of the rights that we have that everybody takes for granted are articulated in the name of somebody that's not nice. For 50 years, I've been dealing with criminal justice, and most of the people that I dealt with were not nice people. But those rights are not for just criminals. Those rights are to protect Americans from political oppression through the use of untrammeled government authority and power. Now, that being the case, forget Donald Trump. Let's just talk about it. Let's go to this jackass in New York that got him indicted for what? Bribing Stormy Daniels not to embarrass him. Well, if you pay somebody not to embarrass you, what happened to you? You got blackmailed. So this stupid idiot that should have flunked criminal law and con law in law school in his first year, he's the DA, and he's stupid enough to indict somebody for being the victim of a felony blackmail attempt. Okay, we indict the corporation because they didn't make a full disclosure on the corporate forms. Well, the corporate forms are public record. American law, civil law, whatever the merits of the case, encourage settlement. When you have settlement, you have a gag provision. So you're supposed to keep secret what the conditions are. So if in this public record, the corporate entity had specifically said what they were doing, they would have violated the gag provision. So you indict an entity for following the law, etc. The whole damn thing is bogus. You go to this mess down there that they did in Florida for what, secrets? Well, there is a case known as United States Department of the Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988, U.S. Supreme Court. There are various and sundry concurring opinions. What they say is the President of the United States, who constitutionally is commander-in-chief and also chief diplomat, has absolute, unquestioned authority to classify anything he chooses to classify or declassify anything he chooses to declassify in any form, shape, or fashion he chooses, partially or completely. Since he's commander-in-chief, he can override the whole damn military. Since he's chief diplomat, he's the one that makes the final decisions. Hey, Mr. Ambassador from France or Mr. Premier, you need to know this. The CIA came up with this. And guess what? The People's Republic is trying to run game on you. You need to be aware of it. Let me show you what we have. Now, he also, since he took the oath of office, that doesn't stop. It's continuous because you swore that you would uphold the law and your duty. When you leave the office, you still have a fiduciary responsibility to the public to uphold it. He didn't give it to the archivist. Well, who the hell knows what kind of security clearance the archivist have, and whether there's some dip in there that wants to reveal something that shouldn't get out, and he might sell it. Oh, what about wiki stuff? You
But
know, the
why aren't more
disclosure.
people saying this? What you just said.
Because
Why
they're
aren't more
ignorant.
people?
They don't have a clue. Let me give you another one. How much have you heard the woke crowd talk about the Constitution's wrong? It calls black folk 3/5 of a person. I defy these ignoramuses to look at the Constitution and find me one damn thing in it that actually mentions race, and it certainly doesn't declare anything, anybody 3/5 of a person. It merely says for purposes of apportioning representation in the House of Representatives, which shall otherwise be based on a census to be conducted every 10 years. 3/5 of all people, all persons, 3/5 of all persons held in the condition of slavery shall be counted toward that number. It doesn't say that 3/5 of a person. It also says, by the way, at the time, women couldn't vote. Most white men couldn't vote. But 3/5 of the people that are held in slavery shall be counted toward that number. And it says specifically, Indians who do not pay taxes are excluded from that number. It says resident, you have to be a resident in the state or be excluded. Now idiots are going around with the first sentence ever given in a census ever conducted in this country in the last 180 years, where it didn't ask you whether you were a citizen. They want to know who's in the state, not whether or not you're a citizen who can vote, but just so you can be counted. Had they not done that in the 2020 census, California would have lost 2 representatives in the House. Illinois would have probably lost 1, and so would New York. But Trump, again, was right on that when he said you need to ask them, are they citizens? Now, I've participated in 5 census takings as an adult. And this is the first and only one where I was not asked whether I was a citizen, and further was not asked what kind of status my parents had and how they got it. Why? So they can keep the number of representatives they have in these states that would lose them. But interestingly enough, these people can't vote. So the people that were there would be able to get extra representation. But the people that were being represented couldn't vote, just like when the Constitution was written. Slaves certainly couldn't. People who had committed to involuntary servitude, indentured servants, women could not vote. And most white men could not vote. So, I mean, what else is new? That's that whole thing about let's give people that live in D.C., they need to have votes. They need to be able to vote for someone that can cast a vote in the House and in the Senate. Yeah, if you want to do that, devolve the District of Columbia, send it back to Maryland so they become part of Maryland, keep the downtown government mall, the district, make it the city of Washington, not the district, and then keep the mall, Capitol Mall is the district, and everybody else can vote for somebody that can cast a vote on the House floor or the Senate floor. That take care of it. You got a small city, well, a large small city, 300 some thousand folk essentially, and you're supposed to give them 2 U.S. senators and 2 congressmen so they can sit there and get the same impact as a whole state? Hell no. That's just another way for a political perspective to wind up getting extra clout. That's not wrong. That's not right. That's wrong. But we don't think about it.
So you agree with DC statehood?
Hell no.
Why
Keep it
not?
exactly like it is, because the idea is DC is supposed to be transitory. You come through there and you work for a short while with the DC government, then you go back to your state. But if you want to sit there and say, DC is my permanent residence, then all you got to do is give it back to Maryland. And then they can vote for Congress and Senate in Maryland, and they can get representation that way. Otherwise, it's just the capital of the nation, so you have the district. But you can keep the downtown government mall as the very limited district. And nobody lives down there. You have Smithsonian Institution, you got a White House, you have the observatory, Naval Observatory, where the vice president lives. Everybody else is transitory. So just keep that as the district and give Maryland back the territory that is now the District of Columbia, and they can vote. You solve the problem, but you don't give 350,000 folk 2 senators that can vote and 2 congressmen that can vote like they are a whole state. And then, see, it's wrong.
How do you feel about, I mean, because we've had a lot of discussion about with people on the street talking about the whole DC issue. How do you feel about going into the 2024 election Give me your honest opinion about RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson primary challenging Joe Biden. I know it's not going to be fair. I already know the DNC's corporation. They've already rigged this for Joe Biden. And then how do
I
you
know
feel
they
about
have to. They got a senile, clumsy fool who wasn't all that bright to begin with, a long-term liar. He lied about his educational status and standing. He sat there. He's a damn hypocrite. He screwed up American criminal law on the federal level. He and Eastland over the years, along with Byrd. A lot of what we have wrong right now with the criminal justice system is because that SOB put in place some rules that allow a federal prosecutor to deliberately and intentionally engage in a process of bankrupting or financially disabling somebody that he or she targets with no chance of getting a criminal conviction. It is a process where the feds can try you on ambush. It is a process where you have this travesty, and I dealt with this when I practiced criminal law. Somebody gets asked, well, tell me about this. I don't know anything about it. And then they get indicted on multiple counts, which you get an acquittal on, and get convicted on the one count that says they lied when they say they didn't know anything about it. Why? Because they said, you're in here for investigation for tax fraud. Okay. Well, I don't know anything about that. Well, we just told you. So now we got one count where we can convict you, and we snatched all of the discretion from the judge in sentencing. See, so yeah, okay. See, that's what we have. And it wasn't just the 94 act this bastard was responsible for. It was the 79 one, the 81, the 87, the 88, the 91, and the 94.
I told you guys it was multiple. There were multiple ones under Joe Biden. Do you think that? How do you
He's
feel
the
about?
one that, along with Isla Stennis, got into abolishing federal parole and federal probation, except for certain very minor misdemeanor offenses, unless you're somebody like Geithner, Obama's Treasury Secretary, who got indicted for tax fraud in the amount of $28 million. And what he wound up doing was he paid a $42,000 fine, got 6 months suspended and put on probation. And then he became Treasury Secretary less than 2 years later and over IRS. Poor Wesley Snipes overpaid his taxes by $250,000. I was there present for his sentencing when I testified as a witness for him. I was the first one the judge called because his lawyer didn't know what he was doing and didn't call anybody. But in any event, IRS had a refund check for $250,000. They found him guilty of 3 counts of failure to file a complete set of returns, and he didn't even do it. There was another company that got indicted for falsifying their status in terms of the regulations, and they told him they were going to do it. He was out of the country for 3 years doing movies where he was helping the country out. See, Wesley Snipes is a real live badass, and my late brother was training him. So it's interesting. He got 3 damn years in a federal facility for overpaying his taxes by $250,000, and Geithner got a suspended sentence and $42,000 in fines for stealing $28 million from the taxpayers. See, I mean, what time is it? See, that's what Biden set up. And by the way, what's on those tapes is criminal. There is no question about it. We had a mock proceeding on whether or not he was guilty or not guilty of, but whether there is probable cause to believe that there should be further investigating for what they call FARA violations, FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act stuff. And there is clear and convincing evidence that he should have been prosecuted and indicted for that. And also other stuff in there too. He's setting up a meeting with his dad and a certain named individual through the emails that are on that laptop that the repairman downloaded all of them and kept the record of them. And guess what? The question is, did he in fact go by the Biden residence as directed, where there were classified documents that he was supposed to take a look at? And the person in question got indicted, worked out an agreement for espionage against the United States. And by the way, that stuff that they're getting him on in Florida and Mar-a-Lago, well, the Secret Service guarded Mar-a-Lago just like they did the White House. The documents by law were prepared for guess whose benefit? CIA and NSA, their charter is to prepare intelligence briefings for the President of the United States. So he was the president, and if he's like me or somebody like Bill Clinton, you read it, it's in your mind. Can't anybody take it? So, I mean, unless you're going to accuse him of spilling the beans to the Russians, well, what about all the rest of them? You can't take it away. So if he chooses to keep it where he is because there is a high probability that there's some incriminating evidence in there that might implicate Clumsy Boy who can't walk upstairs without falling down the damn things.
Who's protecting Hunter Biden, Judge Brown? Who do you feel is protecting Hunter Biden?
His daddy and some other people. Obama wants it too. There's some nasty stuff on there. We won't even get to what's revealed because Hunter Biden thought he was a porn star and was trying to make porn on the same laptops. Some of it's quite interesting, and who he was having sex with on there is interesting too, but I'm not getting into that salacious tabloid nonsense. So some people might have interest to protect. Also, there are some White House tapes in there that need to be kept quiet until the grand jury looks at them, because unlike the Nixon tapes where all you got was audio, in this case you got visual and you can see who's saying what and who's there. And quite frankly, it starts bordering on treason in terms of as it's defined in the Constitution. So yeah, there's some people that really don't want that stuff out. And we still have to deal with who went by there to go take a look at the classified documents that the vice president had no authority to declassify. And oh, by the way, Department of the Navy versus Egan, at least one of those concurrent opinions says that the president has the same kind of authority to declassify that he has to pardon. In other words, the presidential pardon power is unquestioned. It does not have to be justified, rationalized, and can't do anything about it. So,
well, Judge Brown, I have one more question for you that I think a lot of people sent this one in, and it's about MLK Jr. James Earl Ray continued to say that he was innocent.
He didn't kill him, I can tell you that. The Memphis Police Department, their homicide bureau, always said, why are you charging James Earl Ray? He wasn't even in Memphis on the day in question. Who shot him? The FBI went over a few hundred yards from their training academy and recruited 2 men from the Marine Sniper School that was operating at Quantico at the time. They'd just gotten back from the NAM. The FBI, late December 1967, on invoice, got 5 XM21 sniper weapons, which had a peculiar rate of rifling twist because they had special barrels. The rifling twist in those rifles exactly matches the ballistics reflected on the bullet they pulled out of King's body. So 5 of those weapons were delivered to the FBI late December 1967. The same month King got assassinated, April 1968, the Justice Department ordered the FBI to return all 5 to the Defense Department because they were experimental and they needed them in the NAM. The FBI on inventory claimed they lost one. We have the serial number that reflects the lost one. That's the murder weapon. Now, how does the FBI lose an experimental sniper rifle when they don't even have a hostage rescue team? The shot did not come from the flop house nor the bushes, which are right above each other in line with the Lorraine Motel. They came from the fire station. There was a two-man hit team, a sniper team. The inside man that informed them on when King was coming out and arranged for when King was coming out was not Jesse Jackson. So we know who it was, and there's a lot to it. Second thing is talking to the captain of homicide, who retired as head of homicide. He's the late Captain Tommy Smith. He's dead now, but we got a deposition from him. He says when he got there as the first detective, you couldn't have taken a shot because there's a tree blocking both the bushes and the flop house bathroom window from a view of the Lorraine Motel. Hour later, while they were there, somebody cut the tree down. They found there was an order to cut it down, delivered to the sanitation department to be cut down at 9 a.m. But sanitation workers were on strike. Next thing, it was a peculiar aspect of the rifle and ammunition in question. Amongst other things, there was supposed to be this confusion of sound. So when you're in the jungle, instead of being able to hear the crack of a sonic rifle bullet going past a tree, crack, 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 oh, it came from right over there, guys. Let's go get that sniper. It's not going to leave that crack. And instead of the bullet getting there before the sound gets there before the bullet. And everybody on that balcony says they heard the shot first, and then they heard the bullet hitting King. As to a story, by the way, out there that says he got smothered later on in the hospital, well, that's not true. He got shot right below the right cheek, went in, jacked up his molars, upper jaw was badly damaged, wrecked his tongue, took out more molars on his lower jaw, exited the body between the lower jaws. He probably would have lived, but he wouldn't have been able to talk. It hit right there on the clavicle, deflected around under the tough neck skin, destroyed part of the carotid artery complex. He did not have the skin wrecked right there. Flap got yanked, ripped down, but the blood went inside the thorax. Bullet traveled across the back, and he bled out within a few seconds. He probably had maybe 10, 15 seconds to live. He didn't make it to a hospital with the injuries he received, but a lot of folks said somebody smothered him. No, that's not what happened. I know Dr. Claude Pepper wrote this thing where he's talking about this phantasmal Raoul, but with all due respect, I know more about it than he does. It wasn't any Raoul that's a dead end. There were at least four alternative scapegoats, and Ray was the most interesting one because he wasn't even in town. Now, that rifle was not sighted in he had. He had a 30-06 Remington Game Master, not a bolt action precision rifle, but a pump action rifle. He had never been sighted in. Somebody test fired it the day after. It hit 6 feet to the right and 4 feet low at 100 yards. Somebody attempted a headshot, which with a 30 caliber rifle firing ordinary soft point ammo, if you hit torso shot and a person standing next to an emergency room, that's non-survivable. They're dead. But they took a headshot, almost missed it. So, I mean, Ray had absolutely nothing to do with it. And to put icing on the cake, some years ago, I got approached with a woman who did this special algorithm for a device that the Defense Department and the State Department use. And what it does is it analyzes tone of voice and body language. You need a clear video recording of someone. It's not a polygraph test. And since when people talk like I am to you, only 15% of what I'm saying to you consists of the words, 35% comes from the tone, and 50% comes from body language. So 85% of what I'm saying comes from something other than the words used. So on this analysis with this device, what happened was this. Some people in the Defense Department that were concerned with what happens in Guantanamo in terms of what they were doing to prisoners became concerned about following their oath as citizen officers in the military, and they wanted to assess what was going on, so they rented 6.5 hours of video on an interview done in Nashville of James Earl Ray. Well, they thought they were going to get the bottom line profile on a liar. They were astonished when for 6 hours they discovered that on their device, this man was telling the absolute truth with the exception of 2 questions. And essentially the 2 questions were, is if you didn't do it, do you know who did it? And then Ray says, I don't know, or I'm not sure. So it shows he's equivocating. But other than that, when he denies, he's showing way off the graph being truthful. And they used this stuff to determine what bin Laden and Putin back then were saying for real through the State Department and the Department of Defense. So they relied upon it and they were astonished by the results. So they wanted to contact me and find out what was going on. And there's another thing too. Back when we got approached by the Vatican, the Pope at the time was trying to figure out a way to posthumously make King a Catholic so he could be sainted. And they were interested in doing some research on the whole thing. So there was kind of a junior grade collaboration. And I had a crew that I was paying at the time to get into it. I had money, I had the show, and we were doing this. We didn't let up off of it. So it's a real live mess. A real live mess. I'll go into it one day, but no, Ray had absolutely nothing to do with King. It was the FBI that recruited the sniper team. The sniper team, 2 men, fired the shot from the fire station, not in one single rogue at the flop house nor the bushes. There was an Overwatch officer, his name was Reddick, Ed Reddick, who later ran for sheriff and was a sometimes client of mine at one point in life. And he gave us a statement that he got double handcuffed and hog-tied and forcibly removed when he would not leave the scene and was trying to protect King. So they had a squad of black sergeants and detectives who were being King's security force. They were told to leave because somebody was about to kill them. They refused. The captain came down and ordered them to leave in person. Otherwise, they'd be fired and they'd have to see civil service come the next Monday. So they left, but Reddick refused to, and he got forcibly removed by 10 white officers who roped his legs together with a rope and double handcuffed him and threw him in a squad car and removed him. And at that point, the word went from the Lorraine Motel over to the fire station that all was clear. They had pre-sighted the weapon in through a small opening on a sliding window on the 2nd floor of the fire station. And what wound up happening is somebody escorted King to the side door, and you can listen to a recording that Dick Gregory made not too long before he died. We had discussed it. He and I used to talk to each other occasionally, and he said he was going to do it, and he told me to listen. I got a preview before they aired it. He asked this individual, so you went and got King and you took him out on the balcony after he wanted to go out the other side of the motel. Is that right? Yeah. Well, why did you duck back in the hotel? Well, I didn't want to get shot. Well, how did you know there's going to be a shooting? Well, I just figured. See, Freudian slip. By the way, King shouldn't have even been in the Lorraine Motel. It was a whole house. It was an hourly rate hotel, and it was on the whole track. And King was supposed to be in the Holiday Inn's Rivermont, which was their flagship hotel at the time, since Holiday Inn was originally incorporated in Memphis. He was integrating the place. And then there was a scene where some of the black folk who were owned got the hots from their white masters that King was not going to come in town. And they said, King can't come here. And some other folks said, we don't need him here. And some other people said he needs to be here. And he himself was reluctant about coming back the second time when he got assassinated. And there was community pressure brought by some people that were complicit in this whole thing about, why don't you leave him at the Lorraine Motel? At the Holiday Inn, the Rivermont, instead of bringing him over to the whole track. And it's interesting, it's a civil rights museum now, the Lorraine Motel. In hell, although it lists somebody else as the founder on a brass plaque, that person was not the founder. Myself, Randy Wade, Chuck Scruggs, who was with the local radio station, WDIA, and a lawyer named A.W. Willis, who also, by the way, was one of the two black lawyers that helped smuggle the film of Till's body out of Mississippi, take it to Illinois, got it developed at Walgreens, and got it to the Illinois governor after he escaped from being captured and tortured for several hours in Mississippi. That same A.W. Willis, he got together with us and got all the paperwork done. A guy named, Walter Bailey. There are two Walter Baileys that were in Memphis. One owned the Lorraine Motel, and one was an attorney and a county commissioner. I'm not talking about that one. Well, the Walter Bailey in question wanted to sell it. We had meetings at a guy named, we called him Mr. Bobo. He had a club that everybody used to go to. So for several weeks, we had lunch over there hashing about what to do with the place. So he wanted to sell it for economic development, but I convinced him that they ought to make a museum out of it. So they said, sure. A.W. Willis got all the paperwork together, got it sent off, boxed off. Boxed up. We unboxed it to review it. We went over it carefully for lunch, stayed 3 or 4 hours. When everything was clear, he boxed it back up, said, I'm mailing it back off this afternoon. Got back to his office, collapsed, died 4 days later of the advanced effects of pancreatic cancer. His secretary called around to some other law offices, and another somebody named DeArmy Bailey, who happened to be the brother of the attorney Walter Bailey, said, sure, we'll send it off. He sent it off, and they put his name up there as founder of the museum, and he had not a damn thing to do with it. But you see, there's a lot of misinformation. Now, if you go in there now, they have acquired the flop house, and they even have a report in there that's candid. As per what I wound up revealing, it would have been impossible to take the shot from the flop house, and very unlikely for the bushes. Now, why does everybody think it's from the bushes? Well, because of the peculiar aspects of the weaponry. The sound reflected off of the Lorraine Motel, and the echo went right over there. We tried it, set up sound equipment, and we duplicated it. So anybody that heard the shot, they wouldn't look to the origins. That's about why they had the material set up, so it would cause confusion in the NOM. Remember, this is when the hot and heavy was going on in the NOM, 67, 68, Tet Offensive. Cronkite had come back and talked about we're being lied to. And by the way, we had memoranda in that record for the King case, James Earl Ray case, from the FBI, and they were discussing whether or not he'd be more dangerous as a dead martyr, which he turned out to be, or as alive somebody who would not get into civil rights, because they didn't give a damn about that, because everybody was going militant. King was irrelevant in 1967, 68, because it was black power to the people, black power to
Black Panthers, and
and
Well,
BSU and Student Alliance. So what happens is they were worried about two things. One, revitalizing labor. Oh, they had a lot of memos on that one. And two, galvanizing this anti-war movement like they thought he had done to the civil rights thing. So that was why J. Edgar Hoover gave the order we have a copy of, and it ordered all audio and visual surveillance of King to cease, and that was 48 hours before he was shot. They'd even done a table map, you know, these 3D things you see when you go in and they're talking about downtown development. Well, the FBI had one of those done several weeks before. So why do you get one with the Lorraine Motel fire station and all that in, except you're planning something? So they recruited the two snipers, the two-man sniper team from Quantico. They provided the unique ammunition. They got 5,000 rounds on invoice in late December 67, and they got 5 of the rifles that matched the very peculiar ballistic characteristics of what shot the bullet that killed King. So one of them is missing the same month that King is assassinated when they were ordered to return it. That's circumstantial evidence that would have made a case against somebody. Other thing too, on Ray's case, the first judge, the late Preston Battle, gave an unprecedented press conference. He said, I believe Ray is guilty. He entered a plea of guilty, though he has never confessed. See, he never confessed. He always denied it. But I'm very sure he didn't act alone. Now, that Battle was an exercise freak. He ran 5 miles a day, and he didn't show up for court the next day after he gave the press conference. They couldn't find him. So they find his body under his desk in his chambers, and they'd been looking in and out of there all day. So how'd he get there? Next thing, they tried to kill me later when I had the case. That's a long story, lots of excitement, John Wick stuff, you know, real fun from my angle. But it is what it is. They tried to plant 2 kilos of coke in my car that they got caught because some of the detectives were friends of mine and they were keeping a lookout. So, you know, it's all kinds of stuff in there. They don't play nicely with others. And it's dangerous when you go against them. And Biden, by the way, to get back to our original subject, was part of that whole process. Is what it is. So when you really do something, you know, if you're just talking and nothing happens, you haven't said a damn thing. If you are getting dangerous, they try to do something to you. They'll take you out, discredit you, ruin you, everything else that they can get into, unless you stay one step ahead of them.
Well, Judge Brown, one more thing really quick. I saw there was a clip where after Tina Turner died, by the way, I was a huge...
That was not after she died. That was years before. And let me explain what that's about.
Yeah, so I was
Let me explain what that's about. I won't get into it, but let's say this. When I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, Ike Turner was one of our heroes. Why? Because he had a Rolls Royce, as did Tina, and he and his homeboy would drive around, his security man, and whenever he saw us, he'd stop and spend several hours talking to us. He'd send his homeboy off to get burgers and fries and Cokes, and he'd talk to us about staying in school, getting your head together, staying crime-free, a man's duty and responsibility. Tina always treated us like shit. She was vile. She cussed at us. She was disrespectful because they both had matching Rolls Royces. And if you waved with him, the window always came down. He'd pull over and he'd talk to you. There was a smile. He'd get out and shake everybody's hand. Tina would cuss you out. And there were some things that I saw with my own 2 eyes. Yeah, that was violence, but it certainly was not one-sided. And some of us knew about what went the other way. So this feminist thing that was popular in Hollywood, they villainized him. And by the way, he was on my show twice. You know what for? Bet you can't guess.
I'm
He
not
and
sure.
he and his new wife had a foundation. You know what it was? If a woman was abused, they financed her escape from her abuser. If she escaped, it was a gift. If she went back, it was a loan. So I talked to him after the stuff aired, and he said, Judge, about that, I said, I know. He said, man, I didn't know they were going to do that. I mean, we had our moments, but I didn't know they were going to villainize me like that. None of that's true. I said, look, Mr. Turner, you're one of my heroes, and a whole bunch of young guys. We remember you. I'm not from Tennessee. I'm from Los Angeles. Said, I remember when we were in the elementary school and you used to stop and talk to us. I remember when we were in junior high school, you used to talk to us. I remember when I was in high school, you would always come up and ask us what we were doing and how was everything, and to encourage us to be men and take care of our responsibility. A lot of us stayed in school. A lot of us didn't go to jail because of you. And I could probably get on the phone, it's 20 some years ago, and call these folk up who would love to come down and thank you. See, so what I was talking about was quite a few years before she died, and it was just out of a sense of justice. Here's somebody that's done me the favor and talked to me, I don't know how many times over the years between when I was like 11, 12 years old, for God's sake. And then when I was in college, and he's always trying to do the right thing, to do just what I do right now as an example, get down in the hood and tell these young men to straighten up. So I owed it to the man to say, hey, it ain't just one-sided. I can remember an instance where we saw some of this violence, me and quite a few young witnesses, and it didn't start with him. And we can talk about some other incidents too. So, I mean, I'm not saying that there was not stuff going on, but it was not like they played in the press. And then there's this other thing too. I got to Memphis more than 50 years ago and got involved in this game. And I not only did legal services, you were interested in my background, poverty law. I did equal employment opportunity for the feds, and I was the first Black prosecutor for the city of Memphis. And I ran the public defender's office, and this is back in the 70s. I was the chief public defender, and in the 70s, late 70s, I was in private practice. And let's put it this way, I represented a whole lot of pimps and hoes back in those days. And I heard from some of the old school pimps and stuff about the game. So I'm not going to get back into that. But years ago, when they started saying, what do you think about you had him on your show? How did you feel having that? I said, look, man, there's another way. I said, from our perspective, I'm not saying that there is not wrong, but some of what you're calling wrong, we actually witnessed, we young men growing up in what became South Central LA. We also owe that man a debt of gratitude because he was always out in the neighborhood telling us to be straight, showing us how to do the right thing, telling us what it was, and getting on us. And always he'd come up and remember your name and shake hands. And you just a little kid, and here's this superstar coming up and saying, hey, it's okay. You can be a success. So, yeah, that's what that was. And I don't mean any insult to the woman, but, it ain't all one-sided. And I also later got exposed to these clown witches in Hollywood who had a hate man agenda that still have an agenda they're trying to set up where you're trying to destroy manhood. And that's like if you're a woman hater, you're a goddamn fool and something's wrong with you. You're a man hater, you're also a damn fool and something's wrong with you. And I was not going to be complicit in going along with that man hating crap, since amongst other things where I grew up, in South Central LA. A whole lot of folk I knew got killed off, and it ain't the girls doing the drive-bys. It's the young boys, the young would-be men who weren't trained to be men who do all the drive-by shootings, and that's still the case. Right now, Memphis is murder capital of the United States of America, and nobody's doing a damn thing to go out there and do what Ike did for us, which is tell these young folk there's another way. Now, that's what is going on. I was a playground director in Los Angeles at Trinity Avenue Elementary School. Dr. Cliff Stewart, also known as Clifford Stewart, sensei, grandmaster martial artist, Black Belt magazine for 15 years, said he was probably the most dangerous human alive in North America. Dr. Ron Chappelle, who was a playground director, a master martial artist, and me, we ran Trinity Avenue Elementary School, and you know at least two of our students. One of them is the late singer Barry White. We knew as a skinny little 12-year-old on our playground. We taught him what Ike taught us, all right? And he made it. His mama went along with it. We had Tookie Williams, who co-founded the Crips in Los Angeles and was the last person executed on California's death row. We taught him what Ike taught us. See, all three of us experienced Ike when we were growing up, which is why we all went to college. We took martial arts and we became Dr. Brown, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Chappelle, and we did a whole lot of stuff. So Tookie Williams should have had his death penalty commuted, but the governor used to work out with him at Gold's Gym. So I guess he couldn't have anything to do with that and let him go ahead and get executed. But he wrote 6 children's books where he talked about being a man and dealing with your obligations. And even though he started the Crips, helped start them, even though they were some thugs, he did do one damn thing that I have to commend him for. He took our lesson to heart about protecting women. And he always would protect women when they did stuff. Like a lot of times they'd have concerts at the LA Coliseum. And my brother sat there and organized them. He was the promoter. And sometimes Tookie Williams would say, Coach Stewart, you need some help with keeping this thing safe for the ladies? And he'd make sure stuff was safe for the ladies. See, there's a fallout on this whole thing. So it isn't all black and white, crystal clear, and all this bullshit game plan that Hollywood's trying to run on everybody. It's some righteous stuff. And the same people that did this are the same people that ultimately brought you, bail out Walt Disney and ABC. They had what was $1.25 billion worth of debt they could not pay off. They couldn't pay the interest on behind a lawsuit that they got whacked with and lost. Black Panther.
Judge Brown, thank you. Just because the sake of time, like you'll have to come back on and we'll have to talk like more about this.
Okay,
this is a lot.
Now I'll give you a homework assignment.
Go for it.
Rewatch Black Panther and tell me what's wrong with that movie. And if you need somewhere to start, go to the very end of it where the black men and black women of the tribe are in active hot combat trying to kill each other. And then
I'll do that, Judge Brown.
There's so much wrong with that movie, but understand that part of this controversy we've been talking about had a great deal to do with the same people. Now, I love Tina's music. I mean, ain't nobody perfect. I mean, black women and black men have been having conflicts for days, and everybody sometimes has a problem with their significant other. And Ike and Tina had their thing for a long time. They made a good team. They made some good music. But I'm just saying, I was not going to let anybody get away with making it a one-man villain show. It went both ways. So respect for the dead, yeah. I'm sure she reformed, and there's some other bad stuff in her history too, and some in his. Some of it was real. So I'm not getting on anybody. I'm just trying to get the record straight historically, because what kind of punk would I be for somebody to have done this much for myself and other young black men and not speak up for them, saying there's another side. Now, that's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to down women. Women need to be protected. I die for all of you, even if you don't want me to, but I'm standing prepared. Now, that's what men need to do. And that's what we need in our community. Masculinity. We need to man the hell up and start taking care of our business where we live.
Thank you so much, Judge Brown. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, ma'am. And by the way, I enjoyed the conversation too. Don't get me riled up off of this one, but you know, don't do this to me next time, you know. And by the way, one other point. I gotta bring this out. This thing about this famous TV judge sexually assaulted me, and it wasn't Judge Mathis, wasn't Judge Brown either. You know who it was? The name of the person was Koch, Ed Koch, mayor of New York, who had a brand new show, launched the same time as Moesha, with the same studio that woman was involved with. He did it. He talked about it with others. The studio had a problem with it. And when it happened, I actually, on the day when it happened, was having a hearing on James Earl Ray versus Martin Luther King. So it wasn't me. Ooh. Now, Ed Koch, mayor of New York, who had a gay boyfriend that he denounced when he became mayor, and he was trying to show he was manly by trying to sit there and make the move on the lady. So I don't even know the woman. I wouldn't recognize her if I saw her, but it wasn't me. It was Ed Koch. Now, why somebody assumed it was me, I don't know. That just says something sick inside your head. But my thing is, I love women. I die for women. Most of my friends are women. My chief of staff is a woman. Out of all my lawyers, 60% of them are female. Half of my medical staff is female that deals with me. You know, I'm the equality guy. I treat you like you are. So that said, that's something, you know, it goes that way. So just clear the record. Sorry that I had to go take that extra length of time, but you got me on here. The judge in the house. Now,
thank you so much.
Idea. I'd appreciate the opportunity. And by the way, JJB in 2023. Now, JJB2023.com. And if you put me back in and a vote for me, being a vote for yourself, you take over the Memphis city government if you live here, and if you don't, finance it, because it'll be a place where you can come, where all the action's going to be shortly. And if you want to celebrate that, it's summer, you can go to jjbbbq.com and you can order yourself some of the best barbecue sauce available in the United States of America. And it's good stuff. So, hi, Brian, gotta go. This has been Judge Joe. I gotta get on out of here. So I do fear I'm the one that ran. So call me. Catch me when you can.
Thanks, Judge Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, guys. Interesting conversation there. That's why I said he'll have to come back so we can hear more about this. But the conversation, especially about Dr. King, a lot of people contacted me and said, if you're having him on, please ask him about that. So interesting conversation.